Well, I don't want to be that guy, but I think that's title done. At least as far as City are concerned, an 11-point difference is going to be so hard to crawl back with the current playing staff they have available, with just the level of performances that we have not seen from a Pep Guardiola side, let alone this Manchester City team. I mean, 2-0 to Liverpool on the day could have and probably should have been about 5-6. I mean, it was as one-sided a game as you could ever get for two top teams, what have been the two top teams over the last 7-8 years in the Premier League, and Liverpool taking a massive step towards reclaiming the Premier League. Arne Slot just, I mean, he can't really do anything wrong at the minute, can he? He had the criticism of not playing anyone that was of real quality. He's just beat Real Madrid and Manchester City in the same week. I mean, I think we can put that to bed a little bit. Kept a clean sheet in both as well. So every part of the performance you'd want, he's delivered. So I think we can stop that narrative. And just so poor from Guardiola, from City. Just it defies words, really. I'm still in a bit of shock because even the form leading up to it, as bad as that was, you still think big game Guardiola delivers in big moments, and he just didn't. He got it wrong. The players were so poor. And we'll go on to it. We'll go on to the Liverpool attacking phase first. So Liverpool would build up differently to how they normally would. Against Real Madrid, they were quite narrow. Against City, they were very, very wide in their build-up, and they did try and overload the build-up areas to create more space in the attacking lane. And that was with the back four spread very wide. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson playing as very wide fullbacks, very orthodox in their positioning. McAllister, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai very compact, though, in their midfield positioning. They were quite deep, even Szoboszlai. Szoboszlai usually takes spaces in between the midfield and attack, in between lines. He was very, very close to the other two midfielders. And City did not change how they've been pressing at all. They pressed as they have done all season, which isn't great. And it was with a 4-4-2 pressing high. Haaland and Foden on the two centre-backs. Nunes and Lewis taking the full-backs as they were the wide players in the team. And Gundogan and McAllister on Gravenberch and McAllister. This left Szoboszlai as the free man. Now, there's a few ways Liverpool counteracted this. One was that pass straight through to Szoboszlai. And because of how wide Liverpool were, it created so much space within that City shape. Nunes would then have to come in a little bit narrow to try and guard that passing lane into Szoboszlai, but in doing so, he'd leave a bit more space free to Trent Alexander-Arnold. Same on the other side with Lewis to Robertson. And they've really just tested how far City were willing to press because they had that extra man, Liverpool. So they're almost baiting City into making a decision and then they'd react off of it. And it wasn't just the fact that they had clear passing lanes to Szoboszlai. It was the fact that even if it went into Gravenberch and or McAllister, they could use quick pass and combination play to easily beat that City press and then have either Gravenberch, McAllister or Szoboszlai drive forward with the ball after beating that City midfield 2 press because Silva and Gundogan couldn't get close to them. They were so easily beaten through quick little passing movements, didn't have the defensive awareness or the mindset or just the quick little bits of acceleration to keep up with the men as they play through. And so Liverpool broke that time and time again, and getting Szoboszlai in these areas where he could drive forward with the ball to play to the likes of Salah, to play to the likes of Diaz, to play to the likes of Gakpo happened time and time again, especially within that first half. You'd sometimes get Akanji very reactively pushing up to Szoboszlai, but he wouldn't be stuck up there from a pressing point of view. He would only just go there if Szoboszlai got time on the turn and he felt like he needed to do something about it. Maybe he felt like there was too much space. There was a couple of issues that came from this. Because it was so reactively, Szoboszlai had time to get on the turn and still play forward. And with the added space now in behind Akanji, that the rest of the defenders had to deal with one-on-one. And also, because of that front three for Liverpool, they stretched that City back line and pushed them a little bit deeper than I think they were planning to do so. And as a result, that created so much space in between the midfield and defence. So Szoboszlai had more space to run into. Akanji had space that he had to travel to get out, and he was never really going to get there in an appropriate amount of time to be able to stop it. Because of that direct threat, which I think is why Diaz played as the striker, to use his pace to stretch that back line, get in behind, and win that battle for pace, which he has the ability to do because he's so quick off the mark. And also that midfield 3, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, I'll include in that as well, were very flexible in terms of the positions they'll take up. Szoboszlai could come into right back, McAllister or Gravenberch could push into the more forward area, and Trent Alexander-Arnold could sit as the pivot, which is what happened for the first goal, where Trent Alexander-Arnold got the ball in this position and used his direct pass into find Salah with a lovely ball where he created the goal for Gakpo. City just couldn't contend with the rotations, the fluidity, and they just couldn't even contend with the staticness of when they were in their ordained shape, didn't have the energy to keep up with it. And again, it wasn't just being able to beat that press that they had as an option. If they needed to, they could go direct. And that, again, bringing in Diaz, that's why they had the direct option of Diaz. They could go long to Salah into the wide area, who did have a tougher task than he would have with Guardiola, with Ake being a stronger defensive left back. He still struggled with Salah, though, in his quality. Gakpo as well was the option for the direct, where he has the pace and the physicality to beat Kyle Walker, who struggled again in this game. He struggled for the goal where he lost Gakpo's run, but he also struggled when the ball went long to Gakpo in his positioning and his reading of situations. I felt like Gakpo got first to every ball and was able to win the knockdowns, and McAllister and Robertson could then get in support, and Liverpool could sustain the attacks because they could reach that position better than Lewis, Gundogan or Bernardo Silva could. When Liverpool would push forward, Diaz providing the link between the two, with McAllister, Robertson and Gakpo on the left, Szoboszlai, Trent and Salah on the right, and it was the rotations of it. You could get Salah pushing into the inside, in between Akanji and Ake, to allow Trent to get crosses in this area. Salah could also come into this area for Szoboszlai to attack the half space with Trent, using his passing range to provide that little deeper base. So there were options. On the left-hand side, you'd get Robertson making underlapping runs as Gakpo pushed Walker out wide. And again, similar issues for City. They struggled with their mobility and their quick movements to keep up with fast-paced runners and the high-intensity nature of the Liverpool play. You'd get Silva also vacating the midfield to try and come onto Gravenberch, which left Gundogan in even more space. It forced Lewis and Nunes a lot more narrow, so Liverpool could get to those wide areas a lot quicker and easier. Gravenberch would also manoeuvre himself from side to side to offer a deeper base that, no matter where Liverpool were building up, he could provide the pivot to be able to help sustain the attack and play through and create chances. And as I say, they just had too much intensity, too much pace, too much quality for City. And Gundogan again struggling in that holding midfield role. I feel a bit bad for him because he just can't keep up with the energy that Liverpool have, or that a lot of teams have when they're coming to play City now. And getting the ball to the wide areas, having Salah go one-on-one with Ake, having Gakpo go one-on-one with Walker, they were able to find those options because of how they were able to narrow up City's play time and time again. And as I say, it should have been more than two flat at City. A lot defensively, they just couldn't get anywhere near. But how did City attack? Strangely, is what I'll say. City set up with maybe the strangest attacking shape I've ever seen them set up with under Guardiola. And that was with no width on the right and poor width from the left. So they'd go with a 3-2 attacking 3/1 and Haaland up top. Liverpool would press high, but they'd press zonally, and they'd leave themselves outnumbered in the pressing stage, and that would be with Gakpo in between Walker and Silva, Szoboszlai in between Silva and Akanji, who Akanji would invert from the centre-back, moving up to the centre midfield position, and Salah in between Ake and Akanji. Diaz going to press from the front with Ortega and Diaz, and the back three would be very, very split, which would allow Ortega to come in and play as an extra man. Walker going up into a right-back position, Ake moving up into a left-back position, and Akanji and Silva trying to fill the gaps and but be the link between the two. As much as Liverpool left themselves outnumbered in these areas, the energy levels was superb. So Diaz going to press the centre-back, Szoboszlai coming round, maybe even Salah coming around to prevent that easy pass. They'd have to quickly manoeuvre across to Ake, and then Diaz would go to press. Or maybe even Diaz would drop onto Akanji, Salah would press from out to in to try and mark Ortega to then move around to Diaz. And so, as much as they were outnumbered, as much as they had difficulties in dealing with that lack of number, they pressed aggressively and energetically and forced a few turnovers. It's not just that City are poor off the ball, on the ball they're looking so much worse. And they lacked quality, they lacked composure, and they couldn't keep it under pressure, and they forced a few silly giveaways, and they just couldn't contend, as I say, with the aggression and the Liverpool energy. You wouldn't know they were a man down with their pressing structure. Occasionally, if it was on and if Ortega had made himself a clear extra man in the build-up, you'd get Gravenberch coming onto Akanji or coming onto Ake to allow Diaz or Salah to push up. Again, only reactively. He'd quickly move back onto Foden, who was his designated marker, if so. But obviously, City were able to find their way out of these initial stages a few times, just with the fact they have the extra number. And again, the lack of width on the right-hand side was very puzzling. Rico Lewis came in and was in the middle of an attacking midfield three, or in the right side of an attacking midfield three, rather. Gundogan in the central, and he would sort of provide a link between Lewis and Foden and Silva and Akanji. He had McAllister marking him, and Foden in the left attacking midfield position. And while Liverpool did well with the close proximity, City didn't, and they were marked aggressively. They had an extra man in the pressing stage in the deeper phase, did Liverpool, because of that less man in the attack. And I guess this is where they saw the danger. This is where they couldn't afford to give up space. And that would be Robertson being able to come into Mark Rico Lewis because he didn't have a right winger to deal with, McAllister pushing onto Gundogan, Gravenberch onto Foden, and Alexander-Arnold being able to manage Núñez, and Gomez and Van Dijk could then manage Haaland, which, again, was a strange decision by Pep Guardiola because opposition teams will look to double up on Haaland. They'll look to have an extra man on him to keep him as limited as possible, to match his runs, to make sure his physicality doesn't, open you up too much, because even if he beats one man through that, the other can come around on the cover. But Pep almost made it so that Liverpool could double up on him. He left them with that advantage. The only thing that Haaland tried to do differently was pull off the back of Van Dijk into that left-back position that Robertson had vacated through going up to Mark Lewis. But Van Dijk, you won't find a defender that's better in the world with his body shape, his positioning, and his ability to be side on and match runs in behind, and his reading of when passes to come to drop off that yard or two deeper to manage Haaland. I can't remember Haaland getting much of a kick, to be honest. Van Dijk managed him expertly, as he's done a few times. He's been excellent against Haaland every time he played, and without Haaland, that was really the only threat City had to go direct because of that lack of width, because of that lack of transitional option. With that second half, they got a bit more joy with Kyle Walker making the occasional overlap on the right-hand side to provide that width, running off the back of Gakpo and Robertson. Didn't happen enough, and it did create a chance, but nothing sustained, nothing that was going to be any real difference maker for Manchester City. They would also try and go long to Matheus Núñez on the left wing. Trent defended him superbly. I know he gets criticised a lot for that, and look, Núñez is not the toughest left winger in the world he's going to face, but Núñez just couldn't beat Trent Alexander-Arnold. It was a struggle for him to get the ball under control, considering the type of balls he was having to deal with. It's not his specialty. I know he's done it a few times playing left wing this season, and he's done all right doing it. But I can't help but think, as much as you get the frustration of Jeremy Doku, as much as you get the frustration of Savinho, would they not have been better to take on Trent one-on-one in these areas if they could get the ball? Would they not the better transitional threat in these areas? Nothing on Núñez. I think he did what he could, but it's just not his position, and Trent managed these situations expertly. And as I say, that was City's transitional threat. They couldn't play through the midfield. Foden, Gundogan, and Lewis and Silva all struggled, and so City would go long. It felt like they went long more than I've generally seen them, but to nobody. It did get a little bit better for City once they brought on Doku and Savinho in the wide areas. They had the one-on-one threat, they had the transitional threat, they had the pace to supplement Haaland out wide, and as I say, they just had the ability to create width, which they didn't have before. But it was a weird decision, very weird decision. I'm still puzzled as to what Pep Guardiola was thinking with that tactical change. And the second half, a little bit, but there wasn't really long periods in the game where Liverpool were defending deep and sustaining pressure. They sat back a little bit in the second half, as you do, but again, never anything where I thought City were going to carve them open. So Liverpool's game plan pulled up perfectly. The lack of man in the press meant that they had the extra man in the deeper phase, and it killed City's only attacking threat. And then when you hear the stat before the game that out of everyone in this City starting 11, Haaland's the only one that scored a goal. And so if you limit Haaland, who's going to get you the goal? I don't know where else a goal is coming from in this. Foden is better at invading space that's created through others, but there's no one in this team that's going to make movements or make runs that create space, especially when you're dealing with the fact that Liverpool have a +1 in Joe Gomez. So strange setup from City, strange setup from Guardiola, going full on Mourinho at the end with flashing the six to the Anfield crowd, which I'm all for. It was quite funny. That's a moment that will live in infamy a bit in the Premier League. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Liverpool fans, don't be so smug about it. I'm honestly, I feel sick to my stomach about it. But thank you guys for watching. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment down below and tell me why either way. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. In a bit, lads.